photo booth.
Do you know what I'm in? I'm in my self-tape corner.
Fantastic.
Yes,
So do you take lots of?
it's a tricky one.
Do you paint?
No, I'm an actress.
To get home, just in case I
Brilliant.
And
But
this
yeah,
is where
excellent.
luckily we had a
I
caravan
painted
to
the house.
Well, listen, let's talk a little bit because
Probably the same.
when I photograph people, one of the main things I like I'd really like to introduce someone who I met. I've never physically met her, but I met her through Zoom. She has a very exalted title as being the head of Global Dignity in London, and I met her through the charity. But we had a very interesting first meeting when well, actually, I'm going to let her tell you all about that. So here is Cindy. Cindy, nice to see you.
Thank you, Alistair, for bringing us together. I'm so excited to be with all these people who mean so much to me and have been really important during the quarantine. And you are the newest person that I met, so I'd love to tell that story. So as you said, I'm the UK Country Chair for Global Dignity. It's a new role I took on earlier this year. And my fellow country chair in France emailed us this summer and said, I met this incredible photographer, Alistair Morriston, who's doing this photography project. Would you like to participate? All you need to do is to sign up on his website and have a 9.5-minute conversation with him, and then he'll take your photograph for 30 seconds, and that will be it. And it will be part of this incredible project that he's created during lockdown. So I signed up, and as normal, I decided how I wanted to look for that photograph. And I showed up for my 9.5-minute conversation. And I think, Alistair, pretty quickly, you told me you weren't going to take my picture that day. And I said, why aren't you going to take my picture? And you said, well, you're not really being the real you. And that's really what it's all about. So I've actually looked back to find out that we had to meet 3 times before you'd agreed to take my picture. I was telling Mara this story actually because we run and talk together. And you know, you said to me, okay, next time and the time we're going to take your photograph, you said, why don't you do it when you come back from a run? And I think you said that because you realized when I go out for a run, I become my most me. And so by you being able to take my picture after that experience that I have with myself, you were able to take the kind of photograph that you were really trying to get to. So that was then the beginning of what's been a lot of conversations around this theme of time to pause.
And part of the reason that I did that was simply because in having photographed so many, I suppose we like to term them celebrities, exalted people, which I hate that whole idea of the VIP treatment, as we're all very important people. I do feel that sometimes we feel as if once we move out of our home environment that we have to become a peacock. We have to find a dress code. We have to be someone else. And what I have found fascinating about this period of time has been the opportunity to see people in their spaces, to see them more relaxed, to see them more real. But I suppose you felt that you had to make your office space or your home space into the office space and give a projection of who you were in terms of work, as opposed to the Cindy that I've got to know. And I think that's important because my interest in photography is to find out a little bit more about who people are. And having photographed so many actors and musicians, they tend to always feel that they need to project themselves in a way which is going to go on a cover. So it's stylists, it's makeup, it's this, it's that, it's everything. And it loses an element of identity. And I think that that's an important conversation that we should have with your guests. So maybe you could introduce your guests to us, Cindy.
Sure. Well, I thought maybe I could introduce them by sharing a memory of each of them. And I guess I'll go in chronological order. So the first person in this group I met was Mara. And I realized it was just over 5 years ago that we met. And it wasn't the first time we spoke, but a very prominent image that I have of something really important Mara said to me was, I had done my usual thing, and this was the time when, we were flying around the world, for business. And as usual, I would then, of course, go to New York and plan to start my day like in the normal way that you would in the UK. So I always extended my day. And I'd arranged a call with Mara about my training plan, and Mara was helping me to get ready for a marathon. And it was like 4 in the morning in New York, and I was on the phone to her because it was 9 here in the UK. And Mara, you asked me, what is it that you really want to achieve? And, for somebody who is an Olympic athlete to ask me, like, what do I want to achieve? And to really force me to explore, like, this idea that I had that even though I was flying all over the world and having jet lag and everything, that actually what I really wanted was to be like the 70-year-old runner. So, so then the second person I met in order was Steve. And I met Steve through a wonderful organization called the Music Masters, and he was helping them with designing an inclusion index for the music industry. And I thought, ooh, this guy is really interesting. And so we decided we would just pop out for lunch. And the first thing that Steve said to me was, how can I be helpful to you? And I mean, who asks that question? That was just like such a beautiful first question that anyone could ask you. And it really led us to quite a really deep conversation, which often now during, this quarantine situation, like reminds me like how important that question really is. To then really understand, the needs of the person in front of you and how, you can, be a good friend to them, help them to, achieve what they have in their vision. So that's how I met Steve. And, we've known each other since then and have popped in and out of each other's lives in this way. So another really important meeting. And then the third person I met was Elton, and I met Elton just over a year ago. And the first question that Elton asked me was, what gives you hope? And that's also a really searching question to think about, what is it that gives you hope, and how then that can be a basis of a shared future that you're thinking about when you're thinking about working together. And one of the questions that I asked Elton a little bit later was, we were going to meet a new group of people. And I said, how do you want those people to feel? And he said, I want them to feel curious. And again, I think those two concepts have been really important in, the strong relationship that we've built over that period of time. And then Joyce, this is actually the first time I have seen Joyce on a video, which is a crazy idea because actually we've been in a working group together all through the summer, which is how we met. But Joyce is usually joining the meeting from her phone, and she doesn't have her picture on. So I only knew Joyce as this little like black square with a white figure on it until our group was doing an interview of one of our Olympic hopefuls in our running club, and Joyce was the interviewer. And so the first time I actually saw Joyce was in this interview, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, like, I've never seen Joyce before, and yet I have this ongoing relationship with her. And so I thought, I want to know more about Joyce. And so that's why I invited her along today.
Well, there's a common theme in that everyone has pretty much immediately asked you a question, Cindy. So maybe I could just ask Joyce. Joyce, who are you?
Oh, I am I would say I'm many things. Kind of first and foremost, I'm an athlete. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a cousin. I'm a niece. I'm an employee. I'm many things that kind of define me. I would definitely say I'm me. I don't know how else to describe myself apart from kind of just what I do for a living, kind of who I am, you know, as an athlete, as an individual, and how I want to portray myself.
How are you happy to be you?
I am happy to be me, but I know that I hope to be happier once I achieve the goals that I've set for myself. I like to, push myself to be the best person I can be in any aspect or every aspect that, that I put myself in. And, I'm someone that's very hard on myself. I don't like to, take no for an answer. I don't like to slack. I don't like to feel, once I've completed a task, think, oh, why did I do that with more effort? Or why did I not do that better? It's something that's kind of always been a part of me from a young age. I've always wanted to achieve, not for anyone else, but for myself, just to show myself that, of course, that you're the only person that knows what you can achieve, what you're capable of. It's great to have so many other people see your potential, but I think the most important thing is seeing your own potential and seeing what you can achieve, and then how you can move forward with that, that concept that, what, I can do this. And if I keep, thinking this way, I can achieve more each and every single time.
Can I just almost pass the baton of that on to you, Mara? Because obviously in long distance, you must have plenty of time to think as well. And I often think that sportsmen must go through those kind of wonderful moments where they can't hear a thing, and there's a moment of achievement in their running, and they feel that there's a pinnacle, there's absolutely right. But at the same time, your mind must be racing, and your mind must be doing all sorts. I had children who swam a lot, and a lot of the times they would say that they had a lot of time to think while their head was under the water. So were there times where you were just in a completely different world of thought while you were achieving with that kind of wonderful run?
Oh, definitely. I've got friends and family members who came to watch me running the London Marathon, which I've done 6 times, and they say, I was at such and such a place, and I stepped into the road and shouted, Mara, did you see me? And I have no memory whatsoever of hearing or seeing any of these people, because I was so concentrating so hard on what I was on my race. But in training, I would often daydream and go off into my own little world, and people I know would pass by, and I would sort of not register they were there. So you get a whole range of emotions, I think, when you're an athlete. You have the most incredible highs when you achieve something you've worked so hard for, but there are a lot of lows as well, with injuries or not living up to what you want. And I was really interested to hear Joyce just now saying, I think I'll be happier when I achieve such and such. I completely relate to that. I think I've been on that journey. I'm 47 now, and I retired 7 years ago from full-time athletics. And I was totally driven by achieving goals. And I think a lot of that was about earning recognition from people in my life, well, and others. And there's good and bad about that. I think the good things are it really drives you. You know, as an athlete, you have to put yourself through so much pain, and that burning desire to get recognition really drives you. But the downside is that eventually you will become unable to achieve what you want. You know, when I retired, the notion that suddenly I would never win a race, I would never break my best time, I would never be a star again, just hit me like a train. And I realized that you have to be able to just be happy and content with who you are without achievement. So I don't want to make Joyce fearful. It's maybe just a little bit of warning while she's still competing and young, that if your life is about achievement in order to be happy, it can become precarious when you're older and you can no longer achieve what you want as an athlete. But while you're young and competing, it's great because it's so much fuel to push yourself and compete and aim high and so on.
Stephen, I can ask you, is there you must resonate with a lot that's been said, because part of what you have been doing over the last few years is finding ways of disadvantaged people to achieve as well, haven't you?
Yeah, but yes, but I think, you know, it depends what we mean by achieve, doesn't it? Or just be, or just, you know, self-actualize and be everything that you can be. And yeah, that's kind of what my life's about, really. Whether it's me personally, family, friends, clients, colleagues, employees, people that you meet, just to, because if everyone could just be them or their fullest, then that would make everyone richer, wouldn't it? And so in one sense, it's very, very simple, really, I think. It's funny, I mean, as we were talking and you talked about how you met Cindy and you asked her 3 times to present the real Cindy so she could be her, right? It's really interesting because when I met Cindy, it was in a kind of a semi-corporate context, because it was, you know, Cindy from this really big, powerful firm, but we were kind of meeting at a charity, so it's kind of halfway house. But yeah, what I remember that question at lunch was I just wanted to know who Cindy was, really, because we all share that very, very basic human connection. And one of the things Cindy learned about me was, you know, there's what you present, then who you are as well. And one aspect of my personality is being gay, and you know, how that manifests itself. And literally during the course of this conversation, the only moment I've been distracted was when I had a message from a dear friend of mine, Mike, who I went to Libya with 20 years ago, way before Gaddafi fell. And we had a guide, Otman, who was a lovely guy. We got on really, really well. This guy had just found me on WhatsApp and told me that, you know, being gay is incompatible. I have to change course and direction, all the rest of it. It's like, crikey. You realize that actually, no matter how much progress we've made, there's still a lot of work to do for everyone to be themselves. Anyway, yes, but I have, and I think in terms of working with lots of people, just trying to help them be themselves.
Elton, who are you?
Who am I? Like Joyce, I think I'm a lot of things. But I think the first thing I am is, in many ways, is just a dreamer. I think I've always been a dreamer. I was a kid that would go shopping with his mom at the mall and would just sit there and just watch people walk by and think about their stories and what their dreams are and my dreams and how all these things just kind of fit together. And to that point about being curious, it would always make me, and even to this day, you know, I'll sit at a restaurant and maybe I'm there with a friend and I'm like, what do you think the story is of those two people who are sitting there having a conversation? And you just observe it almost like it's a movie, their interactions, their mannerisms. But then I take that into my own life and I think about my family and I think about my path. And, you know, just I've always just been a dreamer, someone who's always thought anything is possible. You know, I listened to the stories that were shared earlier, and I think in many ways, for those who competed and you almost have to be a dreamer, right? You almost have to envision what it's like going through the moment, standing on that stage, hoisting that trophy, you know, and being Nigerian and growing up with a father who academics were everything because of what they could do for you, but really what you could do for your community, right? He would always say, you can make all the money in the world. If you do nothing for your community, it's just a waste of time. So you're always trying to think about all the things you can achieve, not for you, but for others, right? So I think it forces you to even dream even bigger because it's no longer just about you. I'll say, in listening to Joyce tell her story, and that insatiable kind of appetite to succeed, right? It's almost like, you know, until honestly I got married, I kept a lot of plaques and trophies in the case because I was like, okay, what next? What next? What next? And it wasn't until, my partner put the, you know, plaques up and trophies up that I was like, wow, you know, she's like, you are accomplishing your dream. Every once in a while, wake up and and enjoy that some of your dreams are coming to life. You know, so that's one piece I think of who I am. It's a gift and a curse, honestly, Joyce, early on, but embrace it. Embrace that insatiable appetite. And what you're going to find, like Stephen said, is you're going to find ways to take and redefine what achievement is. Because I know for me, when I stopped playing football, I had to find something else. And that's when I was like, wow, you know, my whole life of looking at other people and thinking about how they dream and wanting to influence that actually turned that into a career, right? Of wanting to do that. So now the work that Cindy and I do doesn't feel like work. It just feels like who I am on a day-to-day basis. So helping other people's dreams come true. Something else that's important to me is, you know, clearly being a good husband and being a good father, right? And really driven by wanting to see them achieve their dreams. I play this game called 2020, and it's kind of weird because I thought in the year 2020 I might try to patent this and come out with it, but I ask myself the question sometimes: if I could go back who I am now and ask myself tell myself one thing 20 years ago, what would it be? Just one. And if I could go forward 20 years and ask myself one thing, what would it be? Just one. And both ways, it was going forward is, are you happy? Right? And going back is trust your gut because everything is going to be okay. Right?
I remember I once did a job and quit in the second week, left in the third because I wasn't happy. So I think I've always done this meeting. So yeah, long answer to your question, I think I would be, well, as much as I know, who knows in 20 years time. Yeah. But I think I'd be consistent with what I view of happy now and what I'm going to ask, are you happy looking back? And then the 20 years prior, you know, like hang in there, right? Like, you know, if you can find the strength to be you and you can feel partners and find partners who will let you and support you and guide you and help you be you.
Yeah. All right. So let's take it to you, Joyce. What would that be? This one's going to be interesting. So 20 years from now.
Yeah.
What is that? It's only one question, and it can't be just one question.
Are you living your life to the fullest? I feel like in times like this as well has made all of us realize that we just need to take a step back and look at ourselves and look at our lives and think, what are we doing? Like, if today's my last day or if tomorrow's my last day, are you happy with how you've lived it? Like, are you satisfied how you've spent your life, whether it's with your family, your friends, or anything you're doing, your profession or anything you enjoy doing?
Yeah.
Like, did you do that to the fullest? Did you love your family to the fullest? Did you, perform at your job well to the fullest? Did you achieve that goal to the fullest? Everything that you put your mind to, like, is it to its full capacity?
Yeah. Yeah.
20 years back.
Yeah, what would be that tell?
20 years back, as obviously I was very young, but I would say just to be confident and just know that you are special in your own way. And I feel like from 20 years back, if I had known this stage, this is where I'll be now, I would be more confident. I would be more accepting of myself, because it's very hard to imagine yourself, the reality, I would say. Of course, we have the dream. Like I said, everyone's a dreamer. I feel like at a young age, everyone has a dream. And if you have a dream now, you had a dream. As to, like, what was it? Like, what did you, like, were you dying to be? And I feel like at a young age, we have that innocence, that spark, and that sort of excitement to achieve so many things at older age. And of course, reality hits sometimes. And of course, so many obstacles and so many, things happen that may dim your light. But the one thing I've learned, I would say 20 years back, is just to don't lose that light.
Yeah.
Just to keep it, no matter what comes your way, always keep your light and let it shine, no matter how dim it is. Always let it shine, because like you mentioned, you'll be okay. You'll be okay.
That is, Joyce, that is so powerful. That is so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And who want to, Sid, I see Sid. Mara, okay. Yeah.
So this is my 20 years in the future self asking me now.
No, this is you asking yourself 20 years in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be 67 then, so I think I would be saying, just accept and enjoy yourself. Are you accepting yourself? When you're 67, you haven't got that long left. You've got long enough to do something about it if you're not in a good place. So I think I would be saying, are you just accepting who you are? Are you still worrying too much, striving to be somebody that you think other people will approve of? Just be yourself. And I guess it's similar to the "Are you happy?" thing, but I mean, I worry a lot about everything excessively, so I guess just trying to dampen that down would be the key.
Now, would the response of your 20 years from now to that question, if the answer was yes, would it change how you live your life now, or your approach to the next 20 years, versus if the answer was no?
Yeah, I guess I would start to go down that journey of totally accepting yourself now. Because I mean, at 47, I'm probably past halfway, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, having spent decades worrying about all sorts of things, I might as well start to just accept who I am, and hopefully then by the time I'm 67, I can answer yes to that question.
Well, which is interesting, because you can almost take that now and say what you want that answer to be and start making some of those changes.
Right, exactly.
And then it's kind of interesting you pointed out the age thing, because I remember when I turned 45 and my son, and he was trying to say the right thing, but he came to me and said, "Dad, do you know you have fewer tomorrows than you do yesterdays?" Right? And I'm like, wait a second, why are you telling me this? Right? This is not, you just come in here and say happy birthday. right? But what he was trying to say essentially was live each day to the fullest, right? Because, you know, there are fewer tomorrows than yesterdays. How about the one tell 20 years ago? What would you tell yourself 20 years ago?
I think, yeah, just are you making the most of the opportunities out there? I mean, when you're in your 20s, the world is your oyster, really. But I think a lot of people in their 20s don't fully realize that at the time. You know, now I think, gosh, I had so much energy in my 20s compared to now. What was I doing? I mean, I was training hard, I was working, so I suppose I was kind of making the most of it. But I think those early years, you pack in a lot. You can pack in a lot. So I think I would be asking myself, am I expanding my horizons enough? And to come back to your community point, Elton, I think I would be asking myself, what are you doing for your community? I think at the time I wasn't doing enough. It was all about achievement and goals for me. And some of that was, well, it was great. And some of that, in terms of inspiring others, was kind of good for the community. But actually, I could have done a whole heap more stuff for my community. So I think that's another question I would want to ask my 27-year-old self.
So I want to go to Cindy, but Alistair, I want you to answer the question as well.
Before we do that, unfortunately, Steve has to leave the party.
Okay.
So I wanted to give him the opportunity to share some final dignified words of wisdom.
So, yeah, I'm so sorry, I've got to go. Here you go, time to pause. And a client at 4:45 who's like, where are you? I'd like to do this again. We can do it all with like a one-take Zoom, because I think we're just getting started. So
I agree.
A lot more I'd love to ask you all, and Elton ask some questions back at you. And there's so many common themes. I mean, where we started with the question from Alistair to Cindy on the 3 takes. There's a woman I work with who's brilliant, super smart, super capable, super senior, but she used this phrase that when she went to work, she put on her war paint. And I said to her, well, what do you mean? I mean, like, I just want to talk to you. I don't want to battle, you know, I just want to have a chat, you know. But the war paint thing was like something stuck with me, that everyone's got their kind of their mask, their shield, or whatever. And this has been a little insight into just taking that off and having a chat with folks. So thank you very much.
And on that note, a lot of what I would like to talk about is image. So let's all get together, and perhaps we could get your colleague to join us as well with her war paint too. So thank you, Steve, very much.
Yeah,
Bye,
stay
Steve.
safe and well.
Catch
Thank you.
up. So shall I allow Cindy some more time to think about this as well? Because
Yeah, but you're going to answer the question now.
my immediate thought was actually thinking about the question that Winnie the Pooh asked Piglet, and he says, what day is it? And Piglet says, it's today. And then Winnie the Pooh says, oh, my favorite day. And actually that says to me everything about 20 years back and 20 years hence. It's about being in the moment, in the now, not necessarily knowing what's going to be happening in 20 years. I'll be 84, so maybe I won't have, I'm definitely at that stage where not my children don't have to tell me. I realize now that I have less years than I've had. So ultimately, we just get to that stage where there's a kind of a learning and an acceptance, partly through the people that we've met, partly through the influences, partly from what we've done, partly from growing into the passions that we love, through family, through association, through having children, all of the things that make us grow up. But actually, I've often said that we're all still children. And ultimately, whether it's 20 years back now or 20 years hence, I'd still be looking at the now, if that makes sense, so that I can see myself as I am now in 20 years, but I hope that I will grow and grow up, just as I know that 20 years back, I grew into the 64-year-old now. So it's also about living in the now and embracing it as much as possible, knowing that that now is going to influence the future, the 20 years hence as well. So I suppose it's Cindy, is it?
Yeah,
Cindy?
we've come full circle.
Lots of food for thought. Well, I think to answer the question in the reverse way, so about 20 years ago, so I got married quite young, and so a few years after we'd been married, I was like, you know, we haven't really had that conversation about like long-term goals and what we're trying to achieve. And I said to my husband, like, you know, what do you imagine, you know? And in my mind, being very achievement oriented, like Mara and Joyce were talking about, I was thinking he would say, you know, like where we'd be living, what kind of house we'd have, you know, what we'd be doing for work. And he said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 20 years, but all I know is that I just want to be with you and be happy. And my first reaction was like, that's not really, what kind of goal is that? And, you know, so what that was so important in doing in my mind was sort of like reframing what a goal is. Like a goal can be an emotion, which came out today in the conversation, like to be happy. And it hadn't occurred to me, you know, my nearly 30-year-old self at that time, you know, that being happy could be a goal. And so that then became a really guiding principle for our marriage. That was just so simple, because when you're in the middle of stuff that's not going the way that you imagined, or you're not achieving other goals, you have that star that you're working towards together. And so then thinking forward to my, you know, in 20 years, it really is then about, well, what was I able to do that really helped other people to feel happy and good about themselves? You know, I had the good fortune in my life that I had like an amazing father who always made me feel good about myself, whether it was sports or school or just being. And what I've learned through my work with Global Dignity is not everybody has that, and therefore not everybody has that inherent self-worth that just holds them through times of difficulty. And so really that is, you know, both of us, my husband and I, it's like, you know, what does that then look like in 20 years? Well, we've been able to take what we have both been able to experience and bring that to others. So that's my sort of 20-year vision. But I will say, back to Mara's point, like Mara, Kevin, my husband's neighbor that he grew up next to, she just got her telegram from the Queen for turning 100. So you're not halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get her on and ask her what she'll be thinking in 20 years' time.
I think she'll probably be doing the same as, she's like taking French, you know. She, you know, her neighbor, who's my father-in-law, who's like 80, and she's like, oh, I'm going to the shops, what can I get you? And he's thinking, oh, maybe I should be helping you, but no, you know.
I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because ultimately, you know, we have different generations just on this Zoom call. And you know, I have children all the way through to 18 years old, and my eldest is about to be 40 next year. And it's very interesting to see how that generational influence comes through. Ultimately, we're all we're all on the same page, but potentially we have a lifetime ahead of learning and all the curves that go with that and the ups and the downs. And I suppose there is a point where we begin to look at ourselves more, because I'm a firm believer, and Elton, you've said this, that until you are happy with your own being, that you can't be an influencer necessarily for others. There has to be something about yourself that you feel has a capacity to learn, to listen, but also then to engage with others, and hopefully they will learn from you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm a true believer of that. And it's I'm going to keep going back to Joyce, because Joyce, you said so many amazing things on this call. Just that piece around the confidence and developing it early. And I don't know who wrote about this, but they talk about vibrations and vibrating high, and your ability to vibrate high will draw other people to you, right? You know, your spirit becomes infectious, and people want to be around that. And that so much of that, to what you said around the confidence and embracing that, and embracing all of who you are right now, right? And letting it shine, that's what's going to draw people to you. And I do think, Alistair, that you know, for me, it's in many ways it's been a journey, right? And I've been fortunate, and I've had mentors who have expressed the importance of taking care of myself. And they would often say, you know, Elton, sick can't take care of sick. Right? So, you know, in the work that you're in, and when you are vibrating high and so many people are coming into you, it's like you're absorbing everything. But if you don't take the opportunity to heal, it can actually start to break you down. And you start to lose some of that vibration, right? But it's a journey, and it's a journey of surrounding yourself with the right people. And when Cindy shared with me just the title of this session, I was like, this is just perfect. Like, with everything going on right now, and this is just perfect. And creating these moments to pause and to talk about these things, it puts a little charge, I know personally, in my own battery, to keep me going and hopefully influencing others. But the journey doesn't stop, right? I mean, as athletes, certain things are built into us. People, certain things are built into us. I stopped apologizing a long time ago for being like this, because there was a time where I felt like, okay, maybe you can't be this way. Maybe you got to be something different. And then you wake up and you're like, okay, I've got to stop apologizing for this, you know, because this is who I am, and this is what makes me happy, and this is my definition of happy. And I found that the more that I told my story, because like the two of you mentioned, as an athlete, you want that recognition, you want that, but you also, it allowed me allowing myself to be vulnerable actually made me stronger, right? Actually gave me a greater sense of achievement and of accomplishment. But it's a continuous path. It really, really is.
And Mara, I read up that you were named after the river in Kenya, the Mara.
That's right.
Which is, I also looked that up, 395 kilometers long. So how much further on the Mara journey have you got to go then?
That's interesting. I mean, the thing that the Mara River is most famous for is, as well as its length, is the wildebeest migration goes across it. This incredible movement of probably millions, I don't know how many, but a lot of wildebeest goes through this river, and it's full of crocodiles, and a lot of them die. And it's very dramatic, and it's on the TV and everything. So it's a bit interesting that's that's who I am. Feisty, maybe. So yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question, Alistair, because since I was 11, I wanted to be an Olympic athlete, a top athlete. And I finally achieved it when I was 35 years old at the Beijing Olympics. And then I continued because London was next. But that has basically dominated my life. And I mean, I've done other things along the way, but that's always been what I really wanted to do. And then when I retired, I thought, Jesus, what on earth do I do now? My entire existence in my head just collapsed. There was this big void. So, and since then I've been trying to almost kind of restart my life now that that journey is over. So to answer your question, I sort of hit the buffers big time, and now I'm on part 2, and just trying to, I mean, running is still a big part of it because that's what I love doing, but I went through a period of having to accept that I was never going to get faster. I was really going to be getting slower all the time, and the exhilaration of winning races, whatever was over. So I'm kind of on a new path, and actually one thing that's been really helpful in that is thinking about community and what I can do for other people, because when you're an athlete, your world revolves around yourself. It's a very self-centered existence. It has to be, but that's not healthy sometimes. And so now, like for example, I say, right, I'm going to do 3 small kind things for other people every day. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It can just be making I don't know, making a cake for somebody, or just to continuously remind myself that it'll help me to get onto this new journey more by thinking about community and the people around me. And Stephen's question, how can I be helpful to you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's in a way very true to what I've done, because I was very keen to achieve. I was very keen to get covers. I was very keen to work for the best title magazines, and I was just very keen to have in front of me all of these famous people. And the measure of my achievement seemed to be in how well I was doing in comparison to others, which I suppose is the same with the sportsman, isn't it? Are you first or are you second? And there was then a point where you do slightly lose the emphasis of thinking about others. It becomes very much, I am going to win here. So you lose that capacity in a way to engage with others in a more caring way, until you learn more about yourself, and potentially until you understand that in terms of sport, physically, in terms of what I do image-wise, that potentially you have more of a potential to influence others by the capacity of your work, by the quality, by the resonance of it, as opposed to just the fact that you've got a cover. So you then look at the responsibility that you can then show to others. And that goes with all of us in this call. Joyce, especially, because you are at that stage where you feel potentially that you need to be influenced by others, but actually there's so many people who are looking to you for the influence, which is a big responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. There was a kind of shift, I felt like recently, kind of when people then started to see the potential in me, kind of see, oh my God, if she can do it, I can do it. And in a way, it was something initially that I didn't want to take on because there was a lot of pressure, and I felt like with that responsibility, I had to uphold a certain image of myself, whereas people really looked to me because of who I was as myself, not with kind of, any training, media training, or any sort of kind of, tips and tricks on how to be perfect. It was just me. And a lot of that definitely did come from my upbringing, being born and raised in London, however, being, raised by, African parents, Congolese parents, who drilled in me that, people are always gonna see something in you that you don't see in yourself at times. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to use that to make an impact or not. It's not something that you have to accept, but I thought that with the role and with kind of the career that I aspire to take, you know, there are certain things I need to learn and need to, you know, take on, as well as, you know, not changing myself, but kind of embracing kind of, you know, who I am and allowing it to kind of show, radiate other people, I would say. And I definitely, like, I think the main, you know, word I'm hearing in this conversation is like community. And I do feel like that's a really important thing that I've kind of learned from a young age, that community doesn't have to be a large majority. It can be just a small, you know, your family. If you're influencing your family and kind of encouraging them and showing them that, you know, what I've achieved and what I've done and what I'm, you know, I'm going through, if they can see kind of the beauty in that, then they can kind of use that beauty to then encourage other people, and just that chain reaction, kind of just that continuous, you know, that domino effect, you know, that's what community is about. I think people do sometimes kind of use community as just kind of that large, you know, large reception, kind of, you know, a lot of people, a lot of movers, which is great, which is, of course, that's the goal. But if you can't influence one person, you know, to an extent where it's genuine, you know, it's from a humble, you know, background, then, you know, what is community for you? And I feel like, especially just being Congolese as well, is something that we take pride in, you know, having just that presence and kind of, you know, making sure that if, you know, we are recognized, you know, it's for a good thing. I'm representing not just me, but I'm representing my family, my parents, I'm representing my siblings, I'm representing people who are associated with me. And I think that's probably something that I'm still trying to adapt to, trying to learn. I'm making, you know, it's a part of the journey. Like, I'm hearing from everyone, you know, I do appreciate everyone's kind of advice to me, obviously being the youngest here and kind of just starting the journey, I would say. But yeah, definitely just taking it as it is and taking it in stride, I would say, yeah.
There's quite an interesting notion about you being the youngest, so therefore we can advise you. You should know that you are advising us more than anything. And ultimately, that's because you're just speaking a truth and speaking how you feel. I had many conversations with many people who came to me and said, "Oh, this has been wonderful therapy." And I would have to say to them, "Well, do you know what? It's my therapy as well. You have
Yeah.
to understand that." Can I just just to end this, and we will all get together because I really have enjoyed this, and I think we got so much more to say.
Yes.
Can I just ask Elton, on that idea, Elton, of trying to cross the river in a community, the wildebeests and the crocodiles? If we assume that the crocodiles are your demons, how are you going to avoid the crocodiles as you cross that river of life?
So
Mm.
what's interesting is that for me, I actually like to sit down with the crocodiles, right? And it's not a game of avoidance, right? It is, you know, I joke with Cindy, I'm like, I like conflict, right? Because conflict can be good and bad, right? It could be constructive, it could be destructive, but I would want to sit across from the crocodile, right? I would want the crocodiles to know that I don't fear them. I would want the crocodiles to know that I'm empowered not just by my own beliefs, but by those who believe in me, right? And I'd want to tangle with the crocodiles a little bit, right? Because I think, and I don't know who said, it might have been my dad who said this to me, but you know, the scars you develop through battling, I guess, whether it's the crocodiles or those demons, those are almost like testimonials, right? And that's when that scar, that you'll look at a scar sometime, and that's a healing, right? And I think too often, and maybe what I did when I was young too often, was I tried to avoid the crocodiles, right? And I find myself often trying to create a path where my children don't have to deal with the crocodiles, but it doesn't help them, right? Because eventually they're going to have to face those things. And in those moments when they're in bed at night in the dark and it's just them, if you haven't addressed those demons, that's when they can overwhelm you, right? Because you don't realize just, you know, maybe who you are and the power of who you're becoming. So for me, it would definitely be you know, let's tape our hands up and go toe to toe with the crocodiles.
Good. I hope those crocodiles are listening.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too.
I've got a great image in my mind of Elton and the crocodile sort of sitting across a table with
Just
crossed
staring
legs,
at each
having
other.
tea and having a nice chat.
Yeah, which could get volatile just like that, though, right? And we'd be okay. I'm sorry, Cindy, what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say that actually what I see is like in your mind, you're fighting the crocodiles, but they don't realize it. So, you know, in the Jungle Book where the crocodile eyes are like, oh,
Yeah.
like you charm the crocodiles and they don't even realize that you've gone into battle with them. They're
Yeah.
like, they're coming with you.
They're joining your party, I think. I want to join that party too, Elton.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you all very much. Let's do it again. I know that at the moment there's a lot of feeling that we should all be gathering together. There's the holidays coming up, and there's a little bit of a fright with families that they're not going to be able to be with each other in the same way as they normally are.